it is time. You have to plan it out. The Chiefs have a lot of work to do. Seth has a plan. I have a plan. Let's see if they come together. We're going to take a look at what has to happen for this team to get back to that Super Bowl. We're going to go over a couple of your questions as well. This is going to be fun. Welcome to Chief in the North on RGR Football. Hey, buddy. I do that all the time too. You get in a groove.
Yeah, no, you get in a groove and it's all good. Now, you remember, we're friends. So no matter what I wrote about who the Chiefs should keep and who they shouldn't, you can't get mad at me in front of the nice people.
Your blasphemy will not go unanswered.
Man, it feels, I know we just talked last week, but it feels like it's been longer.
It does feel like it.
It's been a week, man. And so no, it's nice to see a friendly face.
Yeah, you too.
And to talk about the mundane.
Yeah, right. The entertaining.
Yes. Sports has value in that. It's kind of interesting, over the last couple of years with all the stuff, gesturing vaguely at the world. It's kind of interesting talking to people about the value that sports has and stuff. And it's kind of funny because sometimes you get occasionally, every now and then, I'll get someone in my mentions or someone, whatever, just how can you talk about sports at a time like this? Or how can you? And I guess my answer is obviously when there's an emergency, you have to do everything you can to deal with an emergency. Yeah. But you also, if people aren't able to talk about things and joke about things and take a break when they can, which it's a privilege to be able to do that. Yeah. But if you have that privilege, not taking advantage of it doesn't change the world. You know what I mean? And I just, as someone that's been working as a child protection attorney for the last 5 years, I think breaks are needed sometimes because otherwise you will just, And so I appreciate having a little Thursday night time to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. And you're not alone. Kev feels the same way.
Yeah, Kev gets it.
Yeah,
and that doesn't mean don't do everything you can,
Right.
But one thing that doesn't help is needless freaking out.
Yeah.
You do everything you can to help. You find causes that you can support that can help people out. That you do whatever you can. You vote. You do your civic duties. You do your duties as a person, as a human. But you also letting your brain go for a little while is not a terrible thing. And I love it so much that I turned it into a job. So there you go.
There you go. That's why we do this. And honestly, that it gets me into that, that not risk, but another board game. Like, how do you build a franchise? Like, that definitely equates for me. So
yeah,
it is a distraction that I enjoy. So I hope you guys do as well. We're going to talk about not only what Seth's been writing about, but what I've been mocking about in a lot of my film work, because I have been grinding away. Yeah, it's tough. So if you guys have not seen, the place to go is here at minnesotachiefsfan.substack.com. And then you too can read the series that he calls, what is it?
If I were Brett Veach.
If I were. So It's funny because just like a day before you started that, I started a segment on the Locked On show called What Would Veach Do? So it's
I like
right
it.
there, and I'm
that
trying
feels like
to
that would be more on brand
toes.
for me, honestly.
I know,
like
right?
The what would, yeah. I don't know. I've been tired lately. I'm just letting opportunities fly by me. This isn't centered, and it's driving me crazy. Okay,
you're going to be okay.
Now. Yeah, we're going to be all right now.
Folks, we have the mod father, Aaron Morrow's in the house. Stevie's in the house. You're going to see more from Stevie and Gooch here soon. I am going to be doing a couple of things. I have a mock for you. I'm going to record it probably tomorrow because I'm going to get hit with a snowstorm and I'm going to be gone on Sunday morning. So it will likely be a live stream that I have already pre-recorded. So look for the Sunday breakdown being a mock live or close anyway. So a little bit of news. Already had a question about it, and I don't want to get too far behind on the question. So just news looks like today that a couple of sources are now confirming that Bieniemy should be back. Just your thoughts on that? Relieved that at least that position is filled?
I mean, I think it's good that the position is filled. I have always been kind of on who Andy Reid's offensive coordinator is, because I don't think they ever have as much power as people think they do. And I know that, right now there's a debate about, who calls plays and that kind of stuff. And I would just say Andy Reid has control over everything about this team. He does. The buck stops with him. Well, the buck stops with Clark Hunt, and Clark Hunt will do anything that Andy Reid says outside of like releasing Patrick Mahomes. That's pretty much it. That's like in that build. Yeah. Yeah. In
that building, a whole lot of criteria that he can't get to.
In that building, in terms of who's got the juice, like there's like Mahomes and Reid and like Veach is around here. Like, I mean, it is. And so like this idea, that Reid is shoehorned into doing certain things is like, no, he's not. No, he's not. There's one unwritten rule at Arrowhead, and it's don't upset Andy Reid. That's like, yeah. So I know we're going to get a lot of questions about that because, and I think something I'm going to start getting frustrated with, and I want to try to be whatever, but like so many people are still asking about like a supposed rift between Mahomes and Bieniemy. And I would just note that the only reason people think that that's a thing is because of a perhaps well-intentioned essay. Perhaps not. Essay, I guess I would say. I'm not going to call it an article, but like and a piece that got certain things wrong about why certain coaches were left the team that became public today, actually. When you talk about, Andy Reid letting the cornerbacks coach go, you know what I mean? It wasn't like this firing type thing. Now, hey, maybe that's all a big cover up. Maybe Tyreek Hill, when he tweets in support of Eric Bieniemy, maybe he's making it up. Maybe the fact that, it was never, Mike Files, maybe all of those things are just, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, fair enough. Consider yourself relatively lucky.
Yeah, even better.
I would just say, I don't like the fact that it's interesting to me to see how quickly someone's reputation can be torn to the ground based not on anything that the people that work with him say, but just based on rumors. And that's really unfortunate. I was going to tweet about this earlier, and then I didn't because I didn't feel like fighting with people about it. But I've never seen someone go from universally hey, we all love Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy's good at his job. How has he not gotten a head coach opportunity yet? This is BS. To now Chiefs fans oh my gosh, they're bringing Eric Bieniemy back. This is terrible. It's like, well, I mean, what changed other than rumors?
Right.
And that's frustrating. Now, I was always if they wanted to bring in someone from the outside, a new opinion of it, I was always in favor of that. But it's the flip-flop that really gets me, where it's just someone goes from a great asset to suddenly they're dragging the team down, and based on nothing more than rumors on the internet.
And Rodir, I saw your question. We'll throw it up here real quick.
Hey.
It's not about,
and I'm not coming after you.
No.
That. I don't mean anything by that, anything negative.
Oh, I didn't think that you did.
No. Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm just saying, honestly, a lot of players are on vacation. Andy Reid's on vacation. That's why I think the Bieniemy meeting took so long, because not everybody's in town. So the fact that some players responded and some didn't, I don't read too much into that this time of year, because they should all be head down somewhere on the beach relaxing. If it's my call. So that said, that was the news today. But want to get into your series and the latest install of what you would do if you were Brett Veach. And
Sure.
I think I haven't read the second one yet. I only read the blaspheme that was against 11 fullbacks.
So that was part
happen.
2. So you've read part 2.
Okay, so I missed part 1.
Yeah. Part 1 was just a few salary cap things, because that's the first thing everyone's going to talk about. So you restructure Mahomes, and his deal is meant to do that. You save $24 million or something like that against the cap in 2022. No, it doesn't cripple you in 2023. We don't need to go through all the numbers right now, but it doesn't. Cut Anthony Hitchens. They already did that. Cut Frank Clark. That's coming like a freight train. Barring him taking a genuine pay cut, and I mean a drastic one, to where, let's say, and this is just an opinion of mine, let's say Clark went to the team and was willing to do something really crazy with his contract and create some void years and do all sorts of weird stuff, to where his cap hit would only be a few million more. you know, than it would be anyways with the dead money, that is. Then maybe. But even then, I think they need a complete rehaul of the defensive line. And I think as long as you've got one person in the room, it's kind of the idea like when they cut loose Justin Houston, some of it was contract stuff. They could have worked through that. But and it wasn't even all about whether or not he was a good player anymore. Some people thought that. I never did. They wanted new voices in the locker room. And any new voices that you bring in on the defensive line, if Frank Clark's in the room, that he was brought in to have that be his team. And it's he's not a guy that's going to walk. Yeah. He's not going to go quietly into the night on that if it's suddenly not his team anymore.
And I thought you covered his partner in crime very, very well in that piece without saying what I'm going to say now. Jarran Reed was supposed to come to this roster and pick Frank up. Instead, he descended much like Frank did once he arrived in town. And despite a little bit of spark in the playoff run, it was not near enough. And I think it was a completely disappointing signing, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I expected more from Reed. And, you know, I think there's good examples there in both Reed and Clark, because both Reed was a good player consistently for multiple years. Frank Clark was a very good player consistently for multiple years. You just never know. You know more about veterans than you do about rookies, obviously. But you just never know how someone might have in a new system, new contract, all sorts of stuff. I'm curious if they get more out of the defensive line. And everyone was really excited when they brought on Brandon Daly, and I know he's just shifting to the linebackers, but Cullen is an interesting hire. And when defensive lines have generally done very well under him. But the other thing is, I was thinking about, have we seen defensive linemen develop under Daly? Because Tershawn Morton looks like the same dude to me.
And that's a fair argument. The other thing that I will say too is going to a different position group is good for you as a coach. It breadthens what you can do and makes you a DC candidate.
Oh, absolutely. And so I don't think he was being punished or anything like that.
No.
But I do think Cullen is a proven defensive line coach who has gotten results out of guys and helped them develop. You look at like Josh Allen last year versus previous years, he develops guys.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, I do see it as, we're not going to leave you in that position, not only just so you can get more experience in a different position to help you, but we also probably see the end of the road in terms of development. Like, we're not sure you can squeeze much more out.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be key, because there's going to be a lot of youth on this defensive front next season.
Yeah. And I do. That was one of the things. So with the part one, the biggest thing was, so the salary cap moves. So, you know, you do those three things, and they're going to do more than three things. And suddenly you're at like 55, 60 million in cap space in 2022, with a ton in 2023 as well. And then a ton moving forward with a relatively blank roster. And that's what's interesting is people keep talking about this idea of salary cap hell, or the Chiefs being set in a certain place, and they're not. They're really not. They were about as tight up against it in 2021 as they're going to be.
Yeah.
2022 was when they got freedom from Clark's contract, Hitchens' contract, and so they made the move they made. So once they did that, what I wrote about in that one was just kind of looking at the roster from 10,000 feet, trying to figure out what were some of the bigger problems on the roster. Like, what are some things that you can really try to improve on? And the very first thing that I hit on, I know everyone wants to talk about the offense right now, but the reality is they were still a top 3 offense in DVOA, in efficiency, in moving the ball.
Yeah.
And that was with some god-awful luck with turnovers. I mean, awful luck. Yeah. They still moved the ball really well. Were they as consistent as we'd want? No. But there are about 29 NFL teams that would kill to have the Chiefs offense from last year.
Yeah. It's situational, though. Between the Super Bowl and what we saw in the second half of the AFC Championship, it's just the fact you're not living up to what you are.
Right.
I think that's the big thing.
And the only thing that I think people have to remember with those things is that situational stuff. I mean, so the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, I mean, that was a bummer, but what are you going to do? They were up against one of the best and deepest pass rushing lines in the league, and they had no one left. Yeah. They were out, and there's no scheme for, we can't block them, you know. And plus, you're trying to run the ball on that defense. It's like, oh, we should have run the ball more. No, you weren't going to. Not against that defense, coach.
Not against Tampa. No.
That's not with Villa healthy. That's just not going to happen. Not with that group that you had. Now maybe with this year's group, that could have been a conversation. But I mean, even then, Villa's a beast. Yeah, it should have been. And then this year, Patrick Mahomes played really bad in the second half. And that's, you and I talked about that last week, that, I mean, people really want to believe that there's something more going on there. And maybe there was. I have no idea. I don't know the man. But it's like people initially after the game wanted to blame Andy. And then a lot of, video clips and stuff, including some that I did, that showed open receivers. He had shots. I mean, you've probably looked at the film now to talk about remember the shot that I told you about early in the second half where he had Hardman wide open on a Mills concept? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that since then, but that's a touchdown.
He also had him on the drag for that touchdown that he just wouldn't throw it because I just with your recommendation, I went back and did a little bit of film review on. I didn't want to watch it, but I just kept it to your example. My example was another one. If he just throws it to the pylon, that's a touchdown for McCole each time. Like in retrospect, we can understand why McCole was complaining the last couple of weeks.
Right? Yeah, he was, especially. I mean, that drag was huge. But I mean, seriously, that in on that Mills concept. I mean, even a bad throw there might be a touchdown because he only had one dude he had to outrun at that point. And again, this isn't. I'm not sitting here trying to drag Patrick Mahomes. He had a bad half. Well, what do you know? It happens. I mean, every year Aaron Rodgers has a couple games where he stinks, but Mahomes had never had that happen. And what are the chances that was always going to continue? He's still on a stretch for the best start in NFL history for anyone ever. And people want these answers. But anyway, this is all a long road to a short thought. People want to talk about the offense, and I get it. I think they should add to the offense. I think they should add an offensive weapon. I think you should always double down on your strengths, especially in the modern NFL and the passing attack. But the defense isn't nearly as good as the offense. It's not even close. And that's despite significant. It's not like they've said, we're only going to focus on the offense and we're going to kind of ignore the defense because we could just really build up here. If I recall, last year's defense cost more than the offense did.
I believe so, yes.
And that's problematic when you're getting middling to low results. Now, they had a stretch in the season where they played much, much, much better, but it all kind of evened out to average to a little above average. And the biggest thing for me, pass rush. They invested a ton in their defensive line. And the only player that was really worth the investment consistently was Chris Jones and then Melvin Ingram for a while last year. And I would postulate that Melvin Ingram's performance last year demonstrates just how mediocre Clark has been for much of his tenure in Kansas City because of how good Ingram looked when Ingram was playing at an above average level, not like elite.
Well, and that's what it comes down to. And that's why the youth movement has to be there. And that's honestly why I think there's a possibility for changing the way this defense looks, because I don't think Spags' classic big, long, slow power ends are going to get it done. Patty McMurray, I saw you. Thank you. Welcome to the show. Avery, thank you. Very good point there on Ukraine. We're not going to dig too deep into that. So just summarize, what should they do? What were these moves that if you were Brett Veach that folks, you need to go read it, but what's your top one, Seth?
I mean, the biggest thing that I think that they should look at is the pass rush. They're built to win from front to back. Whether or not you think that's the way to do it in today's NFL, that's fine. There's a really good debate there about what's more consistent. Coverage, pass rush. Pass rush is found to be more consistent if you could just go purely by numbers, and that's numbers on multiple teams over the years, right? Aggregate numbers, they matter, but they don't tell you everything. But what you do know is, generally speaking, if you have great coverage, that is more impactful by a little bit, but pass rush is more consistent. And that to me, that sums up like the cornerback position perfectly. Because I'd argue that corner. Yeah, no, you go ahead. You can tell. I'm telling you, it's been a long week.
I know, right? I would just argue that when it comes to the postseason, the coverage is not able to be the advantage that it is.
That's right. We saw Jalen Ramsey get cooked a couple times in the Super Bowl. Now, one of them, the guy grabbed his face mask. That was the funniest touchdown. He's just like, then I was like, yeah, that's a good point, because that's a pretty big play there. And hey, good on T. Higgins. He was covered like a blanket, so he did what he had to do. They didn't call it. Good on him. Fair enough. But you saw that Ramsey he didn't get cooked. Like everyone was like, oh, yeah, man, Jamar Chase cooked him. Jamar Chase just made an incredible play. Ramsey was in coverage there, and he just made an unbelievable catch. There's no one in the league with the rules as they are now. And I would say I just don't think we have anyone. There's no more Revis Island guy. There's no Revis Island guy in the league right now. And that's because Revis Island guys, they don't happen. That's what made what he did so unique. The man shut down Megatron. And if you haven't watched a Calvin Johnson highlight lately, because I saw some people were asking about, like, because of the historic season Cooper Kupp just had, whether you'd rather have Megatron or Kupp. Kupp is a great player.
I'll take both.
Great player. Go watch some Calvin Johnson highlights. The dude was like 6'6" and ran a 4.3. There was nothing like him.
It's not apples to apples there.
No. This is not a fair comparison.
No.
This is not fair to Cooper Kupp. That's not fair to him. But and so anyway, you made a great point there, and that's what I was kind of getting at with the aggregate versus the specific. What you saw in the Super Bowl was in part how impactful pass rush can be in the playoffs, where teams are much more quarterback dependent. Because really in the playoffs, you're much more likely to face high-level quarterbacks, which means you're much more likely to face teams built around those high-level quarterbacks, as opposed to in the aggregate numbers where half the quarterbacks you face are above average and half of them are below average, give or take.
Yep.
Instead, now in the playoffs, it's only good quarterbacks, especially in the AFC, where it's a bloodbath of quarterbacks.
Yeah, that gauntlet's going to be here for a while too.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be awesome to watch, which, by the way, if it's still too painful for everyone, fair enough, don't. But maybe go back and rewatch that Chiefs-Bills game. I thought it would be ruined for me by the fact that, they lost the next week. That game was still awesome. It's still fun to rewatch. So the pass rush is the first thing that I really look at. And so what I try to do, and that's what I would look at in terms of like my overarching, they need help with the pass rush. And they also, there's just a few things. They need more speed, I think, more speed and youth on defense in particular. But the biggest thing is you need better pass rush. And that lack of consistent pass rush, it showed up time after time. It can't just be Chris Jones and nobody. Cornerback and safety depth is a big deal too. So like for me, you notice this is defensive stuff. Charvarius Ward played a lot of snaps the last few years.
Yeah.
And if they don't either bring him back or try to upgrade that spot, I like Snead and Fenton are a really good duo. You need 4 corners in the NFL.
Exactly. And I'm all for somewhere in this draft, there's a lot of good nickel defenders. I want to see them try to attack that with that in mind, allowing L'Jarius to go back outside. That's what I think they have to do.
I think they fell in love with Snead's versatility a little bit this year. And I wonder how much it would help him just playing corner. Well, we watched it happen mid-year. Yeah. But another thing is they need to add a weapon on offense. I really do believe that. I think it'll help a lot of things schematically, even if it doesn't show up statistically. But so those are like the 10,000 feet in the air thing. And then what I try to do is I look at the offseason in stages. So you've got the first stage, which is what I wrote about here, is your in-house free agents, your guys. Yep. And because the Chiefs have a lot this year, I actually am splitting up into 2 articles. So this last time I wrote about guys that I think they should let walk. And then either maybe tomorrow, I might write about Charvarius Ward tomorrow or Saturday. And then next week hit it in terms of guys that I would bring back and what kind of deals I would sign them to. And whenever I do that, I'm pretty careful about what I say. Like, well, I would sign him to a 5-year X dollar deal. I don't really like doing that just because there's so much you can do with structure. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to space them out into 4 categories. One of them was to let them go. That's what I wrote about this week. The other is you got to have them if the money is right, or bargain bin only. And if the money is right and bargain bin only are not the same thing, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yep. And so, I mean, I'll give an easy example of that. To me, Tyrann Mathieu is if the money is right. But you don't look for a bargain on him.
What does that mean for you, though?
That is a great question. For me, that means a 3-year deal for one thing, where you've got the option to get out after 2. And it means somewhere between 15 and 18 a year.
Man. Closer
to the 15.
Yeah, I mean that's tough. That's a volume issue that makes it difficult, man.
Yep. But he's not in my gotta have him list. And honestly, not too many guys are. There's Orlando Brown, and I wrote about him last week.
Yep.
We talked about that a little bit because that article was, I think, dropping the next day when we talked. And I like Brown. I think Brown is already as good as Fisher ever was in Kansas City, and better against high quality opponents.
Okay.
Like that matters. He's the same dude against Trey Hendrickson as he is against not Trey Hendrickson. Fisher was not. And that
That's
mattered.
fair.
Like against against Bosa, against Khalil Mack. You saw that show up there. Whereas Brown is just the same dude. It really is still, you're not coming through me. You're not going inside. You gotta beat me around the edge. And sometimes you will, but not as often as the year went along, unless you're Micah Parsons and just a freak of nature. That dude's gonna
Everybody should have one of those.
Yeah, oh, man, that Micah Parsons is gonna have 20 sacks next year if they keep him on the edge. I mean, borderline unblockable. But anyway, so that's the general thing that I'm in, and so that was a lot of table setting. So I don't know who you want to talk about first in terms of guys that I'd let walk, because there were a lot of them. It accounted for over 4,000 snaps last year.
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, and I'm one for, I think you have to be able to see a clear path to upgrade from Ward if you're going to let him not come back. Absolutely. I also think there might not be a great market for him out there.
And that's what I think is going to be interesting with Ward. I would pay Charvarius Ward $10 million a year because he's a good cornerback and he's a consistently good cornerback. Those are not easy to find. Now, do you know how he'll play after he gets paid? Because some players, that changes things. No, because he's never gotten paid.
Right.
But okay, if you're not gonna sign him, like you said, okay, you better have another plan in place here. Because I don't think Bo Peep Keys is it. I know Mike Hughes isn't it. Right. And so, I mean, those are things to consider. So he was not on my list of let them go. And my list of guys let them go, that really is, even at bargain basement prices, what I think would be a realistic bargain for the player, I still wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And see, I'm with you. I wouldn't spend more than 8 on Charvarius because I'm not willing to overpay for middling performance. And I still consider him middling.
Right. And that's fair. He's one of those guys where it's kind of interesting because there aren't a lot of good players out there that you can have for a good contract. You basically end up paying high-end prices, generally speaking. Now, it's a little bit different. You're not going to pay the same thing for Ward as you're going to pay for, J.C. Jackson, right?
Yeah.
But you're also not going to get remotely the same performance from those two. But Ward might be a player because normally what happens is the market ends up, there just aren't enough good players.
Yeah.
And so you have to overpay to keep guys or to get guys in free agency. You just do. So the key is, if you're going to pay good money, they need to be good players. And so then the question is Charvarius Ward a good player or is he an above average player? Because there's a difference in what you pay. I don't think it's ever a mistake to pay big money to really high-level players. Yeah. And that's one place where I differ from a lot of people that are much more into the cap than I am. Like Joe Thuney, positional value, not a great contract. Right. I don't think the Chiefs are sorry for that, though. Because I think
I'm not either.
Yeah.
I'd rather overpay for good or excellent.
Well, yeah. And I would too. And that's and what I always tell people, okay, so people use Frank Clark as an example to the alternative. And what I always say is, okay, imagine the Frank Clark deal, but he played like Khalil Mack has the last few years, or he played like a Bosa. Then would you care? No one would care what his contract was then. Imagine if, they grabbed Anthony Hitchens, but he played like Leonard. You know what I mean? Or an actual high-level inside linebacker. Because remember, when his deal was signed, that was a top 5 deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal there.
Yeah.
And so that's so important. I don't think teams get in trouble with the cap overpaying really good players. I think they get in trouble with the cap, kind of like what you were saying, overpaying middling players or even players that trend back to below average.
Yeah.
That's where you get yourself in trouble.
I agree. If it's worth the squeeze, then go for it. If not, go find somebody else that you think can get there. And maybe that means you end up young because there has to be an investment at the cornerback position. I've been screaming about the CB1 for, 4 seasons now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'd love to say that L'Jarius made that step forward, but I don't think he did.
Nope.
I'd probably put him about even. He might have even taken a small step backward. So you have to get more talent at that position to complement the pass rush that you have to invest in as well. And right. Josh Kano isn't it, folks. He'll be a role player. He may progress, but you cannot put your money on a guy that didn't see the field. That is not something you can say, oh, we're good, we have a young guy in the background. No, that is not the way it works.
Generally speaking, guys don't go from non-impact to high impact. They might go from lesser impact to high impact, or they might go from non-impact to above average, or you know what I mean? But you just don't usually see this almost nothing track to upper tier player. Generally speaking, you see a few more flashes rookie year. Now he struggled with injuries too, and he was known to be a project kind of traits guy. So I'm willing to wait and see. But like if you just go back and look at like Chris Jones in his rookie year, look at Justin Houston in his rookie year. You know, watch some of these guys play in their rookie year, and then it's pretty obvious. And again, guys develop for sure. But we as fans often want to think that like there's this huge trajectory, and that's rare. It doesn't never happen, but it's rare.
It is rare. Folks, we're going to get to your questions here. We'll finish up at the top of the hour. Avery, thank you for that. It was a pretty good discussion. A lot of opinion on that. Thanks for checking out. If you guys want to watch the Locked On NFL Draft Show, it's not just me. It's Crocker, and it's a lot of quality guys. Some guys that have been inside organizations. John Harris is with the Texans. Rob Rang has worked all over the draft universe. You've read him, whether you know it or not. So we'll get to that. Ms. Holly, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. We're going to start with your question, then we're going to go through the queue of them. Certain people have talked about the possibility of acquiring Jesse Bates from the Bengals. Feasible, desirable, or not? Desirable, but I think he's going to get the franchise tag.
I think so too. The Bengals,
I don't know why they wouldn't.
The Bengals having Joe Burrow, and more importantly, and I like Joe Burrow a lot, but the most important guy in that offense is Jamar Chase. And that's how I know he's not a top like 5 quarterback, guys. Because if there's even a question, then he's not an elite quarterback, right? Because like Devontae Adams is a better wide receiver than Jamar Chase, not by a ton, because Jamar Chase is a freak. But it's not like anyone was ever like, oh, I don't know, is it Adams or is it Rodgers? Like, no one's asking that. No one, like, some people disingenuously ask, like, is it Kelsey or is it Mahomes? But everyone knows. But so that kind of thing, sorry, that just drives me crazy about analysis. It really does. So here's the interesting thing. So the Bengals kind of caught lightning in a bottle this last year. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow were a better combo than anyone expected. And they got a couple of really good matchups in the playoffs in the Raiders and then the Titans.
Yep.
And then they played Patrick Mahomes in one of the 2 worst halves of his career. And they got into the Super Bowl with it. And that made a lot of people forget that the Bengals are cheap. They are stupid cheap. Stupid cheap, guys. They have been a subject of mockery for decades. Maybe not decades, but at least the last decade, because they pay less for the scouting department. And they were even like, they were trying to rehabilitate this leading up to the Super Bowl. Like, you know, this is by design. It's like, no, it's not. You're cheap. Everyone's known this for years. You know as well as I do. I mean, it's a joke among people that cover the league how cheap the Bengals are.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this will be an interesting offseason, because if it were Brett Veach running that team, it'd be like, we got to fix this whole line, guys. This is bad.
Yeah.
Them, they signed their coach long term. It's good. We'll see. But I think it says something that Bates, they're like, I think we'll franchise tag him. It's like, maybe you should pay him. It's not like they don't have cap space. They're not hurting for cap space. They have a ton.
No.
So
it's crazy.
They really could like reload and do a ton of stuff. So that'll be interesting to watch. I would love Bates from the Bengals. I think I'm not going to say what I was about to say in terms of if I had to pick between 2 players, but I like Bates' skill set a lot in terms of his ability to be a consistent deep half guy.
Yeah. It's a compliment for one as well. Patrick, I think we answered your question. A restructure, if it's super cheap, we're fine with, but we really think the best direction is probably just starting over. Jimmy, with the new D-line coach in place, Spags is staying. Yes.
He was always staying.
Yeah, it was not a question.
There was never, I don't think, even a conversation about that.
No, I don't think so either. Now, if they can't get it turned around and they're still 30th in the league, that changes, I think, next season. We'll have to see. Because now you have 2 viable candidates to replace your DC in-house. So it changes it.
Mm-hmm.
Stevie, you guys will be happy to know that I'm he's on. Okay, he was on Over the Cap playing around. Okay, I must have missed that earlier. I'm going back to the beginning, folks. Brian, thank you for your support. Appreciate you. How much do you correspond with the Chiefs organization? Seth, you were hilarious and both a joy to listen to. Well, thank you, Brian. Correspond. I mean, I talk to PR, but I don't talk to anybody inside the organization.
Look, I don't. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
Right.
And that's not me being a dink. That's just the truth. That you want to know one way that people have sources. They don't always talk about their sources. And I am not talking about me right now. I am not. I've never been, never want to be, never will be breaking news guy. Like Brett Veach could call me tomorrow. He couldn't because he barely knows who I am, if that. It barely is doing a lot of work there. He could call me and be like, Seth, I'd really like to use you to leak information. I'd be like, please don't. I don't want that. That seems like a horrible, all due respect to Nate and Matt, the Matt D and Matt V, the guys who do the work that sounds horrible. I don't want to be that guy. Who's your source? Like, I can't tell you. So
I don't have sources, people.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. So, and really the NFL is pretty good at controlling information. That's the truth. That's Adam Schefter is more of a conduit of information than a reporter. And he's great at it.
Yeah.
He's lapped the field in it. And that's because he's careful about what he shares and when. Well, usually the Andrew Luck thing was rough.
And it helps some things.
Yep.
Brian, thank you for your support. We appreciate you.
Yes.
Scott, how much more should I buy into in Veach We Trust this offseason? I mean, you should never have 100% trust in anybody. Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
There will never be the thing that Breland Speaks gets erased from this franchise.
Right. I mean, I'm curious, like, why anyone would have a problem with Veach after this last season. I don't think roster construction was really the issue. Like, the issues that were plaguing them early in the year, it's like, Spags, get your best guys on the field. I mean, this was his best draft. And the last couple of years were pretty decent drafts as well, like low key. Now, the 2018 draft was really bad. That was But 19,
was that the
20,
one? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was the Breland Speaks one and Dorian O'Daniel and I like Dorian O'Daniel. But like their best player from that draft is Derek Nottie, and Derek Nottie is a limited player. But I mean, Veach, I think he did his strongest work this last offseason.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what he does this offseason. I think people are going to be pretty happy with him because I think the way he does things is kind of the way I would if I ran a franchise and be like, all right, I'm going to pick one issue and we're fixing that no matter what. And boom. And look, here's Von Miller. Here he is. And look, we've grabbed, Chandler Jones was cut. Let's bring him in as well. I don't know why Veach talks like that in my head. Like,
I don't know either.
I don't know whose voice that is. Someone from like I genuinely don't.
Creative, though.
Yeah. So I think people are going to appreciate that. But I mean, I trust Veach. I'm curious to see what their draft looks like this year because they killed it last year.
Yeah. I mean, this is my favorite thing about him. Like last year, like, hey, your O-line isn't working. Okay. You can't fix this. Really? Hold my beer.
Yeah. Watch
this.
Like, hold my beer.
Like, the question for me is, what do they identify? Because they have players they're losing at corner, at safety, that whole debate of secondary versus pass rush, that becomes a thing here. And you mentioned my favorite thing, slide all you want. You're not getting away from this.
No, I'm just kidding.
My guy, Nottie, I think they have to re-sign him. And my question to you is, we know we can play the 3-tech. We know we can play a 1. You think he can play a 0 and hold up?
Oh, you want them to switch to a 34?
I don't want them to. I'm just asking because I know Chris Jones can play a 5 or a 3.
Yeah. I mean, Nottie looks like he's playing a little lighter than right when he entered the league. He's playing like around 305, 310. I think he could. But, I mean, I don't know. I think he could. I think 0-tech's a better fit for him than anything that's asking him to. But I think he could hold up.
Yeah. Huh? Okay. Fair enough. I don't think it's anything soon. Just keep it in your back of your mind, folks.
Be interesting.
Do you think re-signing Ingram and doubling up on edge of the draft will be what they do. I hope it's what they do. That's exactly what I would do, Brandon.
Man, when you have an immediate problem, here's one issue is trying to fix the O-line through the D-line through the draft is tough. And man, they caught lightning in a bottle, man. Creed Humphrey, that was obvious in my opinion. And that's why they had to use a second rounder on him. Yeah. Which is a great example of everyone was like, oh, a second rounder on a center. Where's the value in that? It was like, well, a lot actually, if he's awesome.
Especially your previous one was named Ryder.
Man, the writer hate from you.
I ain't letting go of it.
He could have been worse.
I ain't letting go of it.
But I mean, Trey Smith in the 6th round, had they known he would be that good as he was, they would have drafted him sooner. I mean, I understand the health concerns and that kind of stuff, but that's hard to do. And that's part of why they were able to turn it around so quick is they crushed it with 2 draft picks, but they also super aggressively signed a free agent. They overpaid for him and they were happy to do it. And then in some ways, people thought they kind of overpaid for Brown because you got to give up the equivalent of about a late 1st-round draft pick. And you're going to have to pay him. Although, I mean, last year, that 1 year on a cheap deal really got overlooked. Like by people that talk about cost a lot. It's like you're also buying a cheap, a year of cheap play. So I think I would rather see them be really aggressive with some proven pass rushers and double down in the draft. Like I want them to get pretty crazy with it because putting all your eggs in the basket of one dude like they did with Clark, it doesn't work because he might fail. And so it really wouldn't bother me to see them say, okay, we've got money to spend. We've still got a window here. The Kelsey Hill window is still here. So let's get 2. Let's get crazy. And then let's draft a couple guys too. That would not bother me one bit. Double, triple, quadruple down, make sure that's fixed, and then move on to the next thing.
I agree. And you can always run NASCAR if you have too many guys. It'll work. Cold Ape, do you think it's wise to go after J.C. Jackson and pay him huge money knowing we have these positions to fill? I actually don't because of what Seth just said. Like, I'd rather spread it around, not put your eggs in one basket. And we have a ton of questions we're going to cover here, you guys. So we're going to go kind of lightning. Seth, do you have anything to add to J.C. Jackson?
I mean, I really like Jackson's game. And if that's a route you want to go, but it'd be hard to sign him and double down on the pass rush.
Yeah. Gut instinct is Tyrann Mathieu here in 2022?
I don't think so.
I don't either. Brian, if the Chiefs significantly improve pass rush on the edge but do not add interior deal, is that enough this offseason? No. You think not having an interior pass rush is okay?
Well, they do. They have the best in the league, not named Aaron Donald.
They have one.
Indeed. And if he gets a little bit of help from the edges, I mean, a little bit of help or a lot. Like, if you look at like 2018, the 1 year D Ford was ever healthy because D Ford was a plus pass rusher when he was healthy.
Yeah.
He was just never healthy. Man, he was fast. It was a bummer because that first step was just unbelievable. I don't think you need another guy to have an elite pass rush on the interior. If you've got a high level, we saw it when there was like a 4 or 5 game stretch where Frank Clark was playing at a high level, Ingram was playing above average and even a little higher a lot of the time. The pass rush was doing some crazy things. So I think, it'd be great to find someone, but I think Deshaun Wharton, I really think he can do it. I think Cullen's going to be good for him. Wharton has really good traits, Ryan, and I'm saying this for the 2nd year in a row. Well,
and he's your starting tackle next to Chris Jones right now because Nadi is a free agent. They have to re-sign him. So it comes down to me. Teams will just throw the ball in quick game if it comes down to Chris and some new edges that aren't. If it isn't elite, if it's just good, then I don't think it's enough. If it's good, I think you have to have 4 of them.
Oh, that's true. Well, yeah, you want 4. And Wharton, I mean, I don't think they can take Nadi's spot with Wharton because Wharton can't play 0 tech or 1 tech. No. He's not big enough. Now, the interesting thing with Wharton, you and I have talked about this. When he sees the block coming, he's really strong. He can hold up at the point of attack, even against double teams, but he does not see them coming, and he just gets – and that's the thing. You got to be heavier on the bottom end to where if you just are missing the block, you've got sand in the pants, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's just not Warden. Incredible athlete for his size. But
I think he can get there. I think a lot of his recognition as well. Like it's time and reps, to tell you the truth. Jumping from the level that he played in college, I think that was a bigger step than we gave him credit for. And he made it on athleticism the first season, and I think it caught up with him a little bit. Let's see how he progresses in year 3.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you. I hope you're absolutely right. Chris, if they go to a 3-4 eventually next season is what I was kind of hinting about. Free agents or draft picks, yes. All of the above. It will take, and that's the only reason I bring it up now is because it's such a wholesale change right now that you're changing out 3 of your front 4. Like there is an opportunity there because it's right now, and you have to go make signings. Let's not sign 3 and 4 year contracts to guys that won't fit a scheme change in 2 years.
Right.
So,
and you could argue that might fit Bolton and Gay's skill set a little bit better.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's more 3-4 pass rushers in this, 3-4 guys that then will go down and reduce than there are big, long, tall, classic spag.
It's hard to find dudes. This is one reason they traded for Frank Clark. It is what is Clark? Like, I mean, what is he like? He's like 260 or so.
Jimmy, you nailed this, by the way. I know we've addressed it all. I just wanted to throw
it out there
for you.
I definitely he did nail that. But I mean, you got Frank Clark is about 6'3", 265, 270. It's hard to find dudes that are built like that can hold up the edge consistently and are also long, lean-ish, and can rush the passer. Those guys are harder to find than your 250, can bend around the edge.
Yeah.
And that's hard to find too, by the way. It's hard to find good edge rushers.
Bend is, yeah. And that's the thing is, like, for me, I think they need to get quicker. I think they have to abandon this crush the pocket, long, slow power edges. I just don't think it works in today's game because of the frequency of getting the ball out.
That makes sense. And that's something that Spags is going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Max, I didn't pay attention to anything about Crosby in the Pro Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
I got nothing.
There's a really fun video of him asking Mahomes what's it like to play for Reed. And Mahomes is telling him that he's kind of like an uncle. Like, he kind of like, lets you do your thing, whatever. But he's also like, you really don't want to disappoint him because he'll get pissed.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's in his last year. The Raiders would never, ever trade. And Mark Davis would never sign off on a trade with the Kansas City Chiefs, barring like, hey, we're going to trade you Patrick Mahomes for a 3rd round pick. Mark Davis, no way he'd do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's just not in the cards. Avery, good question. If you were going to double dip in this draft, would it be at edge or corner for you, Seth?
You know me, I'm not a draft guy. Based on the way I've heard people talk about the edges and the corners, I think it would be corner in the draft.
Okay. Some viable candidates, Avery. Either the 2 guys from Cincinnati in Sauce or Kobe. Either the 2 guys from UW in McDuffie and Gordon. Gordon's going to be a freak on the testing, I think. I like Booth. I think there's any of those guys that could spread out. There's also some chance takers like Woolen. That might be a 3rd or 4th rounder. That could easily be combinations there of those guys. The difference will be that the UW guys, they play zone in college. They generally transition pretty well. Byron Murphy, Marcus Peters, etc. They can play some man. They just aren't asked to do it very well. So that might cause them to fall in a way that Chiefs could pull that off, but that'd be my thought. Scott, with the big salary numbers, was Chris Jones even with his contract? I thought he produced up to his contract. Did you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
If anything, he's a bit of a bargain.
Yeah. Would you trade for Josh Allen and sign J.C. Jackson this year?
Sure.
I don't know why the Jags would give up Josh Allen, but yeah, I mean, I would be interested. He was my number 2 rusher in his draft class, and I don't think despite falling off in his sophomore season, I don't think he's done anything to say he can't play.
No, he's got great traits.
Yeah. Seth, I missed you last week. When are you getting that buy sponsorship? You got me drinking them.
You know what? They are not the cheapest. You're not wrong. You got to find when they do like good deals and stuff. But some of these, like the watermelon one or the strawberry kiwi one, oh my goodness, they're so good. And it's bad because just a little kick of caffeine.
Oh, just a little. Red Whip, defense has to be the priority. Since the cover 2 isn't going to stop a true wide receiver 2, still make a difference if the Chiefs refuse to run the ball. I don't know that that's true. If you're getting light boxes, you got to run on them, period. If it's just a cover 2 and they're playing man underneath, then yeah, you have a chance to beat some, especially on the low crossers and stuff like that, where you can just move the ball. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to the rhythm of the offense for me. Patrick has to move the ball. Even if you're just getting first downs, that will allow you another chance and an opportunity to go downtown like he always wants to. But you got to move the ball.
Right.
Jaden, do you think there's a possibility they could get DJ Chark and Juju Smith-Schuster? I think Juju's a possibility. I don't know about Chark.
I mean, Chark hasn't really done a ton outside of the name. Like, at least he did some stuff early. I think one thing that people do need to take into account is that these players, especially guys that might sign like a 1-year deal, one of the things they're going to take into account is that the Chiefs have signed someone else. So let's say you are DJ Chark and the Chiefs have signed Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think going to Kansas City to be the 4th receiving option is necessarily the smart play career-wise, because that's something important fans always need to remember, is that this is a business, and there's a certain number of years that you have prime earning capacity, and you got to do everything you can, because this is the way it got phrased to me once by a player that was talking about another player getting paid, and he was really happy for him. And he said, that's life-changing money.
Yeah. And
it is. It's life-changing money, not just for you, but your whole family, and not just your immediate family, your extended family. Like, this is life-changing stuff. So I think it would be tough for them to get 2 different guys. That's one reason why, honestly, I'm more like the edge rushing stuff, the defensive line, maybe grab some mercenaries. Yeah, sure. Try to draft a few projects too. But really, in terms of receivers, that's where I'd go to the draft, because you can draft good wide receivers, really good wide receivers. And that's where I mean, take a wide receiver in the 1st and 2nd round. I don't care. That would be hilarious.
The only problem for that is delay on return, because of the offense. That's the only thing that would slow me down.
Right. And I've wondered at times how bad that delay on return really is, because Sammy's best year with the Chiefs really, in a lot of ways, was his 1st year. And
but he'd been in pro offenses. He understood the game from a different perspective. Asking rookies to do that, I think that's a lot of transition. But maybe I'm underestimating them.
This is an interesting year, and it feels like every year there's more and more mutants coming into the league. Like, you got, what's his name, from the Alabama guy, Williams.
Yeah.
I was looking at some stuff from him, and people were saying because of the recency of his injury, he might drop to like the late 1st. There's no way that dude will drop, right? Because he looks unbelievable. He's so good.
He is good. He's a 1-year performer, and he's been injured twice. So if his medicals are anything in the gray, he could easily drop to the Chiefs at 30.
That would be hilarious.
And they were big on Ruggs when he came out. This guy's faster than Ruggs, and I think runs cleaner routes.
He's faster than Ruggs?
Yep. At least on film he is. We'll see how he tests, but we won't really know.
I was looking at that, and he separates in a really functional way. Like, this isn't, hey, I if I'm even, I'm leaving, which is a real thing. It matters. He's also good at getting even. Right? He's good. You want to talk about stacking. You want to talk about all the different things that you do at the line of scrimmage. He is a big dude to move the way he does.
And he's aggressive. He attacks the corner's stance. He attacks their leverage. He's the real deal.
And that's to me, like, some of these mutants that are kind of entering the league. And there's like a few other dudes that, I mean, there's a bunch of really good receivers again this year.
Yeah, a ton.
Yeah. I like
Chris, thank you. We appreciate you. I hope we can give you a little bit of the a revival from the Blues. I like the Blues when it's playing on the radio, but thank you for the support as always, Chris. Same thing, Will. Appreciate you. Would you like Casey trading for McLaurin? It would only cost $1.2 million next season. It would cost less than. The problem is I think it would cost more than your. Matthew is not under contract. Can't trade him, and it costs way more than a 1st, let alone a 2023 2nd. Washington gets the 3rd and the 1st. I mean, I don't know. I don't think they would ever give him up.
If they were willing to give him up and then also send in a 2nd rounder, sure. I love McLaurin's game. He's another guy who would fit in really well in Kansas City. Basically, just a really good wide receiver. I mean, it's tough when you've got a market with some guys that might be kind of reclamation projects. I mean, it's kind of funny how not psyched people are about like Allen Robinson after one down year. It's like the dude's 28. Like, he didn't forget how to play. The Bears last year were one of the worst situations for wide receivers ever.
And Bill, I misread you. I'm sorry. The years were confusing me there. So Terry and next year's second for this year's first and next year's third. Gotcha. Okay. It took me a minute. I still don't think they'd give him up even for a first round and a swap next year. But
yeah, I don't think they'd do it.
If he got in this offense, I think McColl would be in a tough spot because I don't think McColl can go out and play versus man on the outside on the line of scrimmage all the time. I think that would be a problem. But hey, McLaurin's better than I thought he was coming out, and I had him pretty high to begin with. So angry drunken German. Why can't we quickly give Brown the money we know he's going to get anyway, and then tag and trade Honey Badger? Well, once you tag Honey Badger, no one's going to trade for him.
Yeah. You can't do a tag and trade with him, and he's not a dude who's going to be quiet about that.
No,
that would be that you'd end up in this big war of words. It would just be that would not be great. I mean, he's already posted on Twitter telling people that they switched him to post safety, and so that's why he got fewer turnovers. He said that in a reply to a fan.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's some truth to that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it. But that's not a dude that you want to tag just because there's just no. I really don't think there's any. I don't think there's any chance that they tag him. I really don't. I mean, we'll see. But it's just with some veterans, I just don't know if that's a really great route to go.
I think with him in particular, would probably cause. And now maybe he's softened. I don't know. Maybe this whole social media thing is he just gets drawn into stuff and can't say no. But.
And hey, whomst among us has not?
Yeah, I agree. Jaden, USFL and XFL would merge leagues. My cities would be Orlando, Salt Lake City. Dude, you got a ton. Okay, rock on. I haven't paid attention to where any of those cities are. I have no idea what those teams are doing. But I'll check it out. Bill, thank you. Trade chart, value chart puts cost around a value of a late second round pick for Terry McLaurin. I'm not sure whose trade value chart that is, but I would call that suspect at best.
If it's you got to remember the old Jimmy Johnson trade chart value is because of the rookie contracts and stuff. That's right. Not really, that's not quite great anymore. But I don't know. I have no reason to disbelieve you.
Yeah. No. Hey, if you can get him, get him. Bill, thank you again. Appreciate you. Judge, thank you. You fell asleep. EB to Jacksonville. I didn't see anything like that. The reports right now is that EB is coming back, and he will be the Chiefs OC.
It would be so funny. I'm going on Twitter right now.
Verifying? Are you verifying?
I'm verifying because that would be hilarious and kind of weird. But no, that's Twitter has not exploded into.
It would explode too. You're absolutely right.
Oh yeah, everyone would freak out.
But thank you, Judge. Right now, we believe he'll be back. Theoretical, would Reuben Foster be a legit fit for the Chiefs? No, not at all. He's a downhill player, even if he could play. And he hasn't been on field since like 18, I think. So, nah, he's nothing. I got Tariq Woolen as a sleeper. He can do everything. You're right. 4.34. I haven't seen that reported. If he runs that, he's in good shape. He's a little raw on route recognition. I'll tell you this for sure. If he could stay in contact and stay in phase, I think he'd be fine. I think press man, yes, but you would fall into the same trap in Kansas City that you've fallen into with Javarius Ward. They play man, not press man. And that is an issue for some guys when they just have to phase without being in contact, without being able to control some of the subtleties that the receivers are able to pull off. So I would be reticent of that. Quinn, do you think Byron Pringle is back? I think so. I don't think he's going to have a huge market. And I think he'll probably do what Robinson did last year, come back late after not getting many offers.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I mean, I think they should bring back Pringle over Robinson. That's why he was one of the guys on my list of not to bring back. We've seen enough with Robinson. He lost out a lot on some snaps to Pringle, and he just can't consistently win on his own against man coverage. He just can't.
Yeah, it's tough. You got to scheme it more, and I don't think that that's the way that they want to go. So,
Right.
Ryan Carr, good point. They got 3 starters out of pick 62 plus last year.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
That is not easy to do. And I mean, and a couple of guys that were surprises to people, although people knew Trey Smith could play. But like, I mean, Nick Bolton, like he was better as a rookie than I thought his ceiling was as a player. Not by a ton. I thought what he did later on in his rookie season, that exceeded it. What he was early, where he really struggled with coverage at times, like in the middle of the season, I was like, wow, okay, maybe he's hitting his ceiling early. But then later in the year, he started to exceed it with some of the assignment stuff that he was asked to do in coverage. And it still wasn't extensive. Again, there's not like a Luke Kuechly thing going on here, but it was better than I even thought maybe his ceiling would be. So that's an impressive thing to do.
I agree. I mean, I'll tell you this. I had him as a 3rd round pick, not a 2nd, because I didn't think he could play as well against the pass as he did this year.
Right.
Again, he did well doing what he does well, getting to a position playing forward. He wasn't turning and running in man coverage. So let's not make it like he's all of a sudden Willie's equal in terms of athleticism and coverage ability. But he certainly was on 1st and 2nd down. He was as good as I thought his ceiling was as well. So kudos to him. And he actually looked more athletic to me as a Chief than he did as a Tiger. So maybe there's something there. He may have more ceiling than I thought. So hey. Last question from Alyssa. Thank you, Alyssa. Who are the free agents next year? And will we extend any of those guys now? I don't think any extensions are in the works right now for guys that are not expiring. Let me look because I don't even know.
The only one that I would say they might look at is Hill, because you could save quite a bit of money in year 1. You know, because right now I think his cap hits like 19 mil.
Right.
But I mean, Hill seems like a guy. I mean, he hasn't really struggled much with injuries, although he had a few last year. But I mean, he seems like someone that basically, if they come to him right now, he's probably like, yeah, give me $27 million a year and sure. And
sold.
Yeah. And so I just don't know if there's a lot of room there for that to get done, because he's going to ask for DeAndre Hopkins money. And I would assume so, at least. And so that one's tough to get done. And I think that's the only one that really makes sense. Oh, and then Jones, I think, no, he expires after 2023, I want to say.
Yeah. And that's why I didn't mention Hill, because I expect him to be done here quickly. It honestly didn't even enter my mind, because I think they have to get that done. Nick Allegretti, Rashad Fenton, Juan Thornhill, Colin Saunders. Those are the only guys that are, maybe Tommy Thompson, you re-signed. Thompson. I always say Tommy Thompson. Tommy Townsend, not the director of the Health and Human Services Department for the federal government. Sorry, folks. So that's it. Overall, I feel like this was a good night. We got some things off our chest, and I feel like we have a good foot forward. Next week starts the combine, folks. We're going to go over it. I'll clue Seth in on what's going on with the draft picks. It's going to be okay.
That will be nice to know.
What do you have coming next week? Is the Veach series going on?
The Veach series is going to continue. I'm going to try to write something for tomorrow or Saturday about Charvarius Ward and why replacing him might be more complicated than people think. Because I think he's a better player than he gets credit for. But I don't know if he's such a good player that they should throw the money at him that would be required to keep him. It's kind of similar, honestly, and they're very different kinds of players, kind of similar to the analysis with Kendall Fuller when he left. Except Kendall Fuller had shown a higher ceiling as a player in other systems. So that's just a little tougher and more versatility than Ward. It is. Because Ward's a boundary guy. But it's a similar thing where it's like, man, Ward can play, but can he play what it might take? Maybe you let him test the market and see what he comes back with.
I think that's probably likely, because I don't think they can afford to really put it in up front. So we will see what happens, folks, and we'll report back to you next week. We'll have another stream. I'm looking forward to thank you for spending your night with us. Seth, thank you for making the time tonight. It's what he said. And thank you all for being here, including you, Holly. Appreciate you very much. You all have a great night. Roguehead Huddle tomorrow with Stevie and Gooch should be in the tank. And the mock Sunday breakdown is going to be fun. I will catch you guys then. Have a great night. We'll talk to you later.